In our first reading today, St. Paul reminds the Corinthians not to pass judgment on anyone and to allow only God to be the judge. He says, God alone will bring to light what is hidden in the darkness and will disclose the secret intentions of the heart. In short, we have no right to judge because there is so much we do not know. We often do not fully know where people are coming from or why they do what they do. The great Jesuit philosopher Bernard Lonergan puts judging only as the third step in the dynamics of knowing. He says knowing presupposes experiencing, understanding, judging, and decision-making. When the experiencing and the understanding are not adequate, there is no way you can trust the judgment of people. In today's gospel, Jesus is being judged on the basis of his apparent differences with John the Baptist and the Pharisees. The question is, how come the disciples of John the Baptist and those of the Pharisees do a lot of fasting and say a lot of long prayers while your disciples do not? It's a question that presupposes that John the Baptist and the Pharisees are the criteria for holiness, and comparatively speaking, Jesus does not meet up to their standards, and so his holiness is being questioned. In my book, Yeshua, Son of Man, I attempted to describe what I call the tension that I could read between the lines with regard to the dynamics within the group of John the Baptist. John the Baptist seemed to me to have signified full confidence in Jesus as his potential successor in case he got into trouble with the authorities and his community became headless. And I intend the pun there. Unfortunately, as evidenced by today's reading, he may have had other members who were not only uneasy about Jesus' personality, but in fact questioned Jesus and his ways. Like, for example, they made an issue about Jesus' seeming lack of asceticism, which was supposedly the distinguishing mark of the spirituality of John the Baptist. You remember that description in the Gospels of John the Baptist as an ascetic character who dressed in camel hair and a leather belt around his waist, and who ate only locusts and wild honey in the desert. On the other hand, Jesus was not only seen in parties and banquets. He even shared table with tax collectors like Zacchaeus and Matthew, who were tax collectors. And one time, he even allowed himself to be anointed. In the time of Jesus, that meant massage. Jesus allowed himself to be massaged in public by a woman who was identified in Luke chapter 7 as a prostitute. It must have shocked people. So Jesus did not seem to be very choosy about his companions. He even had uneducated fishermen and former rebels, subversives in his company. It seems that the intrigues about Jesus even reached John the Baptist in prison. On the basis of the questions sent to Jesus through the messengers that had supposedly been sent by John from prison, you could immediately sense that there was really some tension going on. You could feel that John was also beginning to have second thoughts about the leadership of Jesus after receiving bad reports. Kung minsan may ganyan, intrigeros, who make bad reports about Jesus. And this is coming from the other disciples of John. And so John supposedly asked, "Ikaw na ba talaga? Are you really the one we have been waiting for? Or will I just look for somebody else?" Meaning, John, as it were, is saying, nagkamali ba ako? Did I make a mistake in trusting you and endorsing you as my successor? Actually, part of me is suspecting that John did not really ask the question that way. I have a feeling that these unnamed disciples or messengers of John were the ones trying to create a conflict between John and Jesus. And so, when Jesus said in reply, "Go and tell John the Baptist what you see and what you hear," I think Jesus was really addressing his reply not on John the Baptist, but to the messengers themselves, ang mga intrigero at intrigera. John could not possibly have known what was happening outside the prison cell if nobody had reported it to him in a manner that deliberately misrepresented Jesus. The ones whom Jesus was really challenging were these self-appointed messengers who relied on fake news. May fake news na noon. On hearsay and not on facts. Those who misrepresented Jesus and spread malicious gossip, rumors, and lies against Him. Mga chismoso at mga chismosa. He said, "You tell John the Baptist what is really happening. Yung totoo lang. Huwag yung haka-haka ninyo. Huwag yung chismis nyo. The blind see, the lame walk, the dead are raised to life, and the poor have the good news preached to them." Meaning to say, hindi totoo. It was not true that Jesus had lost his moral bearings, all because he was associating with tax collectors and sinners. The evidence was this: they were being converted. And so he said, "Blessed is the one who takes no offense at me." And now, they are also questioning him about fasting and about not making long prayers, as if these were automatic signs of holiness. No, Jesus explains, you don't do fasting for the sake of fasting. There is also a kind of religiosity that is sick, a kind of religion or a kind of asceticism that promotes a joyless faith, one that you might call masochistic or even sadistic, as if though suffering by itself should be glorified. Hanggang ngayon may ganun pa rin. Jesus is against the portrayal of God as a killjoy God, or a God who does not want people to enjoy themselves or their lives. A God who makes people feel guilty about being happy, as if God created human beings to be miserable. I cannot think of anything more heretical than that. Have they forgotten that the kingdom of God is often portrayed in the wisdom literature as an invitation to a party, a rich banquet of God? You see, brothers and sisters, feasting and fasting are related to each other. There is a proper time for feasting and a proper time for fasting. And you do fasting precisely so that you can do meaningful feasting. Remove fasting from the context of committed and unconditional love, it becomes meaningless. It makes no sense.